Okie doke.
So the question is this a platform that is visible? So Dr. David Fawcett is joining tonight. He has a webinar on the same platform on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com platform. We do record the webinars. We do not record any of the drop-in groups. We have a number of drop-in groups. Let me briefly, since we don't have bunches of questions stacked up, I'm going to briefly explain the difference. These are recorded so that they can go on our platform as the recording, which also goes on the YouTube channel. So there's bunches of previously recorded webinars. The drop-in groups are never recorded. They are a safe environment. Dr. David also does the Tuesday night drop-in group for co-occurring chemical and sex addiction, commonly called chemsex. So that is, specifically, then people can see each other. You can talk. I sub in on the betrayed partner groups fairly regularly, but they are a contained space, always have a moderator. They're not 12-step, they're not therapy, but provide a safe place for people to get support, give support, but those are never recorded. So those are the differences between the two. And then on the Seeking Integrity site, we have a number of work groups, including the Out of the Doghouse that is starting right now. Again, for men who have been caught cheating. I'm thrilled we're going to have the Betrayed Partner work group starting on Wednesday. Finally, we've been wanting to have that. So level 1 is starting. And yes, you have to take level 1, even if you've been a betrayed partner for a long time. We'll have level 2 as well. So there are some spots remaining. So let me back up one more time. The work groups are a 6-week course. Most of them are $350 each for the 6-week, 90-minute course. The exception is the Couples Healing from Betrayal work group, which is 6 weeks, $950 for a couple, but it's 2 hours, each night. So, but we have a variety, the Sex Addiction 101, Porn Addiction 101 for guys who have not had in-person it's been images, but not, hookups or affairs. That's a good choice. We've got the Inner Child. We're going to be starting that probably again in May. The Attachment Wounds, the Out of the Doghouse. Dr. David is working on, I'm going to call it healthy sexuality of some form. We don't have a title for it yet, but that will be coming out. It's like, what does that look like? So that will be
also intimacy,
another one.
like another one on building blocks of intimacy, sort of.
And which will be great. So we're going to continue to add those. Again, not therapy, not treatment, but they are the psychoeducation that you don't get in going to a weekly therapy session. So lots more resources. We try to have low cost. We've got support sessions. Dr. David does an expert consultation, as does Dr. Rob. Those are different. You can contact me for those, but on the Seeking Integrity site, you can sign up for a 25 or 50-minute support session to get some support and guidance. So, okay. So we've got some questions.
Good review, Tammy. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. So the next, or the first question is there a place to find example of therapeutic separation agreements, specifically in-house therapeutic separation samples as outlined?
That's a great question. And first of all, I just want to throw in a plug. If people are going to separate, I think a therapeutic separation, what is really key. We often have people that come and they've just kind of decided to separate and move out temporarily. And there's nothing magical about just being apart for 3 months or 6 months. But what a therapeutic separation does is set specific goals and objectives that can help the couple heal while they're physically apart. And so that really is it's a great question, because people, they basically take the form of agreements and contracts and what our goals are. It's like a treatment plan. Most couples therapists, most CSATs, I think, have copies of similar ones. They may have their favorite one. I think a lot of the couples organizations that certify different couples therapies like Imago and other kinds of couples work do also have, probably on their websites, might even have sample contracts. But what you want to do is work it out. They kind of have to, like an individual treatment plan, they have to be individualized. And so you really kind of, there's so many specifics that it's hard to get a template, but probably if you Google it, you can find general templates that are going to give you a sense of what's there. But the beauty of them is they really are custom tailored to the couple and the goals and objectives that they have for that separation. It's a really useful technique, I think.
But I think you've addressed a few things. It's like, what does it look like if we're going to have a therapeutic separation? Is it, yeah, in-house? Okay, then what are the boundaries about different uses of rooms? And, like, is somebody going to use the kitchen at a certain time and somebody else? Some people do a therapeutic separation and they actually, have a time to have dinner together or something,
Right.
on certain days of the week. So there's a lot, but also, the boundaries. But I really do appreciate what Dr. David said about, a plan, because a lot of people separate and they're 2 to 3 years separated and there's no plan. It's like, what is the plan? How are you going to know when it's time to either, reunite or the end of the relationship, whatever that is? What are the goals? What are the achievables? Like, what is it you're looking to see? How is safety created? What are the goals for the relationship in order to see that there is progress to move forward? So even if you find kind of a template, it should address, a number of aspects of it. But I really think that you working with your qualified professionals,
Sure.
in order to define this. A lot of people are trying to do this, I say, as a DIY project. This is complicated stuff. So having a good support system and, navigating all of that really makes a difference. So I say lean in. This is when you need a professional.
Right. And I think a lot of people, especially the in-house separation that's mentioned in this question, a lot of people have kids. It's just not so hard to just break your life into 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but to make that work and to make, especially the betrayed partner, feel safe, emotionally safe in that context, it really requires a lot of structure and planning and cooperation. But the structure is key. And that's where the therapist can really, really help out.
Yeah. Yeah, including communication. Are we going to text? Like how often can we talk? What is it? If we have kids, are we talking only about the children? Like all of those things, like what is the agreed upon, and how often are we going to review? Are we going to review it in a month and see how things are? And then, okay,
Exactly.
the plan is that we're going to reevaluate this. I would hope within 6 months there would be, let's really see how things are and, see if we can move forward in a different way.
As a therapist, I think 6 months is kind of the outside for therapeutic separation.
Yeah.
I think beyond that, I don't know what that means, what it is, but I think you start to lose the sense of momentum and moving towards something.
Right. Okay. Next question. Wife of an SAA. I know how to help myself from feeling so triggered, working steps, meetings, reaching out. But once I do get triggered, all that seems to happen is I feel worse and worse until eventually enough time has passed and I'm okay again. So my question is, do you have any tips on how to feel better when reaction to triggers hit so hard? I feel it impossible to keep functioning through the day. Thank you. I have seen this happen, like I've witnessed where it's just like, boom, and so it's hard to get that, kind of inner tube around you to go, okay, it's bumping up against this. So what are your thoughts, Dr. David?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to really commend this person for the action that they're taking, working steps, going to meetings and so on. But there's a lot of parallel here with the addict, right? Because these internal triggers or external triggers, they can come from any direction. And a trigger can be a feeling. It can be like that dread, the twisting in your stomach, or dread,
Mm-hmm.
or loneliness, or anger, or resentment, or whatever. Even joy, positive feelings can be a trigger as well. And then also the circumstances, right? Somebody's an hour late coming home, you don't know why, whatever it is that we read into situations and assume. So these are all really important things. The best thing is to have these grounding techniques like you're doing. But I think, and this is the hardest thing in the world, once you get triggered, you have to kind of be able to kind of disconnect from it. We talk with triggers for addicts, and I do a lot of work with drug addicts of, it's like a wave, right? It hits a peak and it goes down. And if we can just kind of let that pass through us instead of grabbing onto it and say, oh my God, what about this? What's happening? We take something and we run with it and make a lot of problems for ourselves, really. So if we can let it go, find the facts, do what you need to do to make yourself feel safe. But I think it comes down to us not us being willing to let those triggers and the emotions go. And that often requires a couple of things. One, distraction. So distracting yourself. With clients, I do like 4-7-8 breathing, for example, where you inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. There's different kinds of breathing techniques that help you regulate and let go. And they also, if you're counting breaths, 4, 7, 8, you're kind of distracted from whatever you were worried about. But also just physical movement, I think, is great. Drinking hot or cold water, anything where you can kind of reconnect with your body. I do a lot of trauma therapy, and if somebody goes into a little bit of a dissociation while we're doing work, just having a cold drink or a hot drink, you can feel it going down your esophagus and it reconnects you with your body. So there's little tricks like that just to get back into your body and reach out. It's all about connection. So I think you're on absolutely the right track. I think it's just a matter of kind of adding to it and making sure you don't take that and really run with it, a fear, without checking it out first in a rational way.
Well, and understand that this is normal. I mean, I hate to say it, but part of it is just like, you're doing what you need to do. Dr. David, you're talking about the waves, and I thought, and I have a feeling, if you're able to kind of visualize, sometimes, like initially it felt like, the giant surfer waves where they're crashing down on you, but hopefully they start to be, more gentle waves, even though, disruptive. I love the grounding. I love the breathing. The 4-7-8, I do that personally a lot. I had a visualized technique that somebody gave me, and I actually use this one quite a bit too. And they were like, when something's coming at you, imagine the stream, and that the water is just passing over the rocks, and it's just going to keep moving. And if I visualize letting that flow, that helps me a lot, because then it's not getting stuck. It's water flowing over. Movement. It's going to keep going. Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And so, but I'm not moving, but the stuff is,
right.
And that has been useful for me. Because, and I mean, like, as soon as you started, I was like, I got the visual of the babbling brook and it's running across, so,
right.
So I think all of those are helpful. Yeah.
One other just tip from, I do hypnotherapy too. And we know with hypnotherapy, if you're like imagining a safe place or some sort of visualization of your favorite, most wonderful place in the world, right? It could be out of nature or wherever. But the more of our senses we can use, the more three-dimensional that becomes. So what does it smell like? What do you see? What time of day? Are there shadows? Do you hear birds or water? But to use all your senses really does kind of take you into that space, and it gives you a break. What you want to do is break that cycle, and that gives you that relief to step out of that for just the briefest moment.
Yeah. I like going to a safe space. If you're able to, like, physically take yourself, like going for a short walk, might be, the physical movement,
anything physical.
Being aware of nature, anything that, like Dr. David said, disrupts it, even for a little bit, so you can get your thinking brain back on instead of the emotional, and feeling all the triggering. So.
Right. And what's happening is our midbrain, which is the emotional part of our brain, has taken over. It's hijacked our whole brain. And the frontal cortex, which is the executive function, kind of goes offline. And so we're reacting out of emotion and impulse, as opposed to kind of having our full faculties when we're triggered like that. So just take some practice, but you're on the right tracks for sure.
Well, and I bring this up often, but Troy loves work of, like, I know for me, I finally figured out that I have abandonment wounds, and when they get poked, and just being able to go, that's my abandonment wound being poked, but being able to think about it and go, okay, what do I need to do to take care of myself?
Exactly.
Disrupts it, rather than like, oh my gosh, and the drama of the trauma, that goes with that. So, that you're here, that you're learning about it, just being able to identify, okay, that's a trigger, what do I need to do? Having the emergency kit, like, what do I need to do if I'm starting to feel triggered, like before, our brain goes offline,
Exactly.
Start on one of those. Early in recovery, I carried around, notes. I had like the emergency, like in case of emergency, this is what I need to do. just having it was helpful, you know.
And Tammy, you and I have been around long enough, but those are all on paper.
It was
Right?
in paper.
It's
Yes.
in my
Yes.
wallet or right, yeah, with the pocket, right? Not on my phone. They didn't
Yes.
exist.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It was.
Hard copies.
We're very old school, but okay. I'm a heterosexual relationship with my husband of over 30 years. As a child, his mom would tell him she wished he was a girl, and on occasion, his sisters would dress him up. Later in life, he started cross-dressing. First D-Day, I found porn of mostly women. Second D-Day were thousands of pictures of she-males. I have never seen or heard of this. He swears he is not attracted to men and definitely not gay. Getting past normal porn is one thing, but this is so much more confusing. Any idea what is going on, I assume. So
Yeah,
thank you for sharing this. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot going on here. It's a very pretty complex question. But what we do know are that some of these patterns, we don't always know where they come from, but sometimes in a family of origin where this happens, that sort of sets a pattern or piques some interest, or an idea gets filed away that emerges much later in life, and it starts to pop out. What we do know just statistically, though, is that cross-dressers are typically not gay. They're typically heterosexual. And this is a fetish. It's not a sexual orientation or attraction. Now, the she-males is something else. What I have found, and this is kind of dramatically increasing the last 5 or 6 years or so, is that, I think this is, by the way, true with porn as well, that transgender porn, for example, is up like 400% in the past 3 years. It's like a trend right now. But we're seeing this fascination with this. And we know with any kind of addictive disorder, there's tolerance. And so as we get further into our addiction, the bang for your buck, if you will, from dopamine, from doing the stuff we used to do, doesn't do it anymore. And so people kind of escalate and kind of up the ante into more taboo, more kinky, whatever. So, and the form that takes, that the kinkiness can really kind of have to do with the personal history. So I think there's a lot of factors kind of coming together here. But in general, when we see just cross-dressing, that's a fetish that doesn't really indicate orientation. I've also seen a lot of guys, I've worked with a lot of heterosexually identified sex addicts who get into, when they're acting out, sexual acting out with either transgender women or she-males like this, same thing. So I think this is kind of a fascination. I'm not sure exactly what it says, but I've come to learn that there's a lot of different ways to explain this kind of behavior, a lot of it due to the addiction itself. I don't know that this has any kind of indicator about the orientation of your husband. What might be useful for him, if he hasn't done already, is some kind of therapy to go back and see what is the impact of his mother and his sisters doing that at that time, and is that something he has happily incorporated into his arousal template, or it's something that disturbs him. And by the way, that's what we do with fetishes or anything like that. What a therapist does is, if it's disturbing to the person, then we work with it. If it's not, then it's really none of our business, frankly, unless it's illegal or not consensual, obviously. But in this case, I'd want to check in with your husband. What does he think of it? Obviously, it's disturbing to you to find that much evidence of his addictive disorder, and that's a problem, of course, in itself. But in terms of, as a therapist, how I would approach this, I'd really want to interact with him and see where he's coming from and what that's all about. But I have a feeling it's a mixture of escalation and history, probably.
And I go back to, regardless of what he's looking at, which is, and I hear, challenging and painful, because you indicate
Of
getting
course.
past normal porn. And I kind of go, what is normal porn anymore? I mean, honestly, there's so much, and it's so, I mean, it's disturbing to hear all the different things. However, what I hear is, this is the second D-Day, and you found thousands of pictures. And so regardless of what the porn is, that's a huge problem. And until and unless he gets help, stopping that, then unpacking all the rest of it. I mean, like that, it really is, stop the, we talk often, it's, stopping the problematic behavior, that's addressing the symptom, and then, addressing the underlying issues. But, until and unless he stops the porn addiction, which is, clearly taking up lots of time, for him. So working with a qualified professional, and this is one of those where, like, Dr. David and Dr. Rob are PhD level clinical sexologists. So you, like, CSATs are great at addiction, but they aren't as comprehensive on sexual health and all of the other aspects of it. So you really do need, a specific kind of help You can always email me at Tammy, TAMI, at seekingintegrity.com. Be specific on where you're located, because all therapists have to work within their state licensure too. So you may also, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Tammy. I was just going to add, I think this really reminded me so much when we get clients, especially coming into treatment in LA. Everybody wants to know why. That's the first place they want to go to, is why is this happening? And if they can, and especially guys, I think if we can figure out, then we can do something about it, right? That's fine. Jump to the solution. But with addiction, the why is not the first question. The why is really second or third question. The first question is exactly what Tammy just said. You need to stop the behavior. You're not going to stop the behavior by figuring out, why am I doing this? You need to stop the behavior first. And then you might have a chance of getting some clarity, but it's not going to be the other way around. So I just wanted to make that point, because we often see people's like, well, I wouldn't do it if I just knew why I'm doing it. No,
Yeah,
you're an
and I
addict.
know lots of people that actually know all the whys, or a lot of the whys, and they still do it. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I really think the better question is how. How do we,
Exactly.
with the information we have right now, how do we move forward? One more suggestion: Dr. David and Dr. Rob both do expert consultations, and they are good at helping identify the issues and giving guidance. It's a one-time thing. It's not therapy. So that's, you can reach out to me about that too. But, sometimes just getting some clarity. As one couple shared, they'd been to 4 different therapists over 2 years, and nobody was really able to give them, clarity on what the issues were or guidance for moving forward. And Dr. Rob was able to do that. So, not spending 2 more years of chasing around can be helpful. So okay, next question. I'm the betrayed spouse, married 40 years, had full therapeutic disclosure with polygraph in November. My SA husband is in recovery, seeing a therapist, 12-step group, sponsors, mentor, etc. He recently recalled that when he was 17 or 18 years old, he sexually molested his friend's 12-year-old sister. This hits close to home because when I was 12 years old, I was sexually molested by 2 guys, one 18 years old and one 16. I went to therapy for this, and now I find out my husband did a similar thing. How do I wrap my head around this and heal?
Yeah, that's a really difficult situation, because it does strike so close to home for you. And yeah, even though it's historical, right, but it's still very close, especially given your personal experience. I think I see trauma all around here, trauma on his part, trauma on your part, and I hope actually both of you probably could do some work around this issue, but especially yours. I think just because of the reminders. I don't know what work you've done on your own past. Hopefully, you've done some. The way you speak of it, it sounds like you have. But yeah, I just think this requires some investigating. As a therapist, what I would do is work with you individually. Like, okay, what does this mean to you, right? What are you telling yourself about this new revelation? And then really work on communication with the two of you to heal, because you guys have gone too far on this road to recovery to let this trip you up. And it's an unfortunate thing, but I don't think it's by any means insurmountable. But I would think probably after trauma work, if that doesn't produce any great upset, then I think couples work. I think this is where couples communication, couples dialoguing could be really helpful, just to kind of talk about this, share feelings, and hopefully move past it, or make as much peace with it as you can. But this is an issue, and this is not unusual. We see these things happen, these kind of parallel processes that emerge. So just I would be very gentle with yourself and with both of you, actually, because this is the kind of thing we were talking about earlier, where these old triggers get activated, and it's really hard to let them go. And once they start to smolder a little bit, and so that's why I think checking out the trauma piece first, making sure you're not activated or in kind of a traumatic response, and then really some couples communication stuff to really work it out and make sure there's no hot spots there that need to be addressed that could start to cause trouble later.
Well, and this is a hot spot. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, and I often am talking to people about this, and it's like the layers of trauma, and a good therapist is going to help you deal with the trauma you're experiencing right now, and then there's the trauma that you experienced when you were 12, and both of those need to be attended to, but it isn't like just trauma. It's like it's unpacking the layers of that. For him, like I have to share this. he's doing the 12 steps. This better end up on his fourth and fifth step. I mean, this is the secrets are what make us relapse. The secrets
Totally.
are what keep us sick. So, as he's having these discoveries, but it also, I really see this is the brokenness. This is the brokenness of addiction, that we do these things, that we would not choose to do in recovery. And I am confident he, from what you're sharing, because he's working on all of these things, that there is grief and remorse in what he's done, but as part of the 12 steps, we have the ability to work on all that. And I hope you both get, help and support with this. So.
And I would just say, statistically, a 17 or 18-year-old that does that, almost 100% was also abused himself earlier. So there's more to this story. And I don't know if he's aware of that or not, but just statistically, that's very likely. So these are deeper issues that need to be really addressed.
Okay, next question. Instead of mother enmeshment, is there such a thing as family enmeshment? My sex and porn addict husband grew up in a family where the roles were reversed, and he has always acted as the parent to his parents. To this day, he still checks on his parents' credit card accounts and spending. He gets phone and mail about appointments, etc. When his younger sister tells him about an issue she's having with parents, he jumps in and acts like the mediator without being asked. I know this is not healthy for him. He's only 8 months into recovery and needs to be focusing on himself and our marriage, not saving his family all the time. Is there a way to get unmeshed from your family?
It's really a great question, a great observation. I think, families have these dynamics. We talk about parental enmeshment sometimes, but we also see these families where there's some dysfunction and kids take on different roles. And some kids in the families can take on the family hero. Some people can be the scapegoat. Some people can be the lost child. There's different kinds of persona that people can adopt. And it sounds like for whatever reason, your husband has adopted that hero role to kind of be everything to everybody in the family. And what happens, and I agree with Tammy, this is really important for him to look at for his own recovery, because this is all about validation, how he gets his worth. I do a lot of work with core beliefs. So I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy unless I work extra hard to make you love me or be everything to you. And I'm making this up. I don't know if that's your husband or not, but typically it's driven by these core beliefs that I'm not quite enough on my own as I am, and I have to do more just to make sure I get your love or I don't get rejected or whatever. So I think this is something that's going to drive him crazy, and clearly it's probably driving you crazy already. And you're right, his focus needs to be on his recovery and his family. And I think, I don't know if you probably mentioned he's in therapy, I don't recall, but this is something that maybe a therapist could have a heart-to-heart talk with him about, because I think this is one of those adjustments in how we behave that needs to be enacted, because it may be that without boundaries, this is a lack of boundaries is what this is. And he may need help in establishing those boundaries and then maintaining them, because it sounds like he's going to have trouble doing them on his own. And it's not going to help enough probably to be after him to do it. He's going to have to drill down, do some therapy on that and understand why is he doing this at some level. But as I said a couple minutes ago, the why is second. He just needs to get some boundaries and make the changes first. And he's probably going to need support, probably from a qualified, health professional who can help him with that. But no, this is a problem. This is a real problem. And he's going to be trapped in this behavior the rest of his life unless he changes something. So
yes.
And the families, by the way, don't help out. Families often will just put up with it and go for it. Yeah, he's taking care of it. Let him do it.
Yeah.
So they kind of get very lazy about it.
Yeah, right. They're highly motivated to keep the system. This is working for them, not working for you, not really working for him. I put in the chat Gavin's webinar. Gavin Sharp did in December of last year, it was great. It was a webinar on healthy boundaries for addicts. And he talked about, we all need healthy boundaries, and explained it. So, cause we often talk about, partners, setting up healthy boundaries, and that's critically important too. So this was really useful. So I would encourage you can click on that link and it'll take you to the webinar. But but yeah, and we talk often too, like on the airplanes, they say, put your oxygen mask on first. If he doesn't take care of himself, he's got nothing to give everybody else. So yeah, looking at the various roles, but just starting with what does he need in his recovery, and how I remember seeing an exercise one time, and it was setting the different rings of where I need to have people in my life. Like, you are his primary relationship. You should be close, and parents might need to be a layer or two out. And what do I need to do to create that helps? It doesn't have to be a mean thing. Healthy boundaries are not punitive. They are about, this is what I need. This is how we work best in a relationship, so it isn't all taking and all giving. How does this become a mutually beneficial relationship? So, but I'm so glad you're asking that.
There are some really good exercise and information in the realm of dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is a kind of a variant of CBT, which is a common therapeutic technique. But some of the DBT work helps people clarify, what do I need versus what do you need? And how do I negotiate this? Because very, very often, addicts in general, I think, have no idea what they need. Right? Every morning in our check-in group, we ask people to name a need because they're not used to thinking that way. And I think just to really get clear, and then if they can start to identify not only your needs, but my own needs, then it's really hard to kind of figure out, okay, who gets the first treatment? So I think working on that is really, there's good exercise out there to learn those skills. It's a skill. And yeah, he needs to just practice it.
And it's going to be mighty uncomfortable for him to say
no,
or not now, or he will perceive it, I think, as really letting down the entire family, and they'll go, what the heck happened? But, like, it'll also be the beginning of freedom for him too. So, okay. Next question. Is full disclosure of acting out behavior a requirement for recovery? Is there a statute of limitations? I'm thinking this is an addict asking, because it's like, well, if it happened before a certain time, so.
Right. May 7th of 1985.
Exactly. If it's more than 90 days, I'm just joking. So, yeah.
So full disclosure, what is the point of full disclosure? It's not to cause pain or grief. It's really to clear the air in a very healthy, facilitated way that really sweeps the deck and allows for a healthy foundation for healing. So if a couple is determined they want to try to work this out, then disclosure is really, really important, because otherwise first of all, the process is such that you don't have the revelation sometimes, or there's doubt, there's shadows of doubt kind of lurking around. And so I think, yeah, it really is important to do. And I think I don't know of anything else that can match it, frankly, in terms of just getting a fresh start and getting it all out there in a very safe way for everybody. Now, the statute of limitations, no. I think one of the things we do at Seek Integrity is our clients do a timeline, and very often we'll have people, as they start to do this timeline, it's like priming the pump, and they're starting to remember more and more and more. And yeah, they start to remember stuff from 30 or 40 years ago. That's not, expired. Those are all patterns of this behavior. And I think it's essential to see the addictive patterns as a whole, because they lead, they build, they morph, but it's all one trajectory. And so we really need to understand that. And so does the partner. So I think, yeah, being able to do that is really important. Now, we do it in a way that's not harmful. We try not to do harm, but we also want to make sure the partner understands what they need to know. And so, yeah, it's important. And I don't think anything is off the table. Tammy, I don't know of any rule like that in terms of bringing something in a formal disclosure.
Well, I've had some people.
In terms of content, but not time-wise.
Right. I've had some people that go, if it predates, our relationship, but just like you were saying, if it's this pattern, you go like, okay, it really isn't about my partner. It's about all this history that I've had.
Right.
Now, a formal therapeutic disclosure is not just, me telling somebody, here's what I did, and giving all the gory details. It's a process, and working with a qualified professional. Dr. Rob often shares about this, that, they're like 2 pages because it's data. Now, if it's, like I use pronouns he and she just for clarity. So if he had sex with your best friend, that is important, specific detail, because you've been doubly betrayed, and it's if there's been sex in your house, in bedroom, you need to know those type of things. If it was, he was in Vegas, like I spent this much money, I've had unprotected sex, you need to know about your sexual health. So there's very specific things, working with a qualified professional, both of you, to prepare for this. This is not, while this is an event but it's all part of the process. It's part of the healing journey. So, so disclosure is the most talked about topic, and Dr. Rob hosts a peer case consultation group every week with professionals who do just this work. It's the most talked about thing. So this is not a DIY project. The other thing is, I can't tell you how often people withhold. So lies of omission are as bad as lies of commission. So if you are lying and going, well, if my partner finds out about this, they will find out about this, and then it will be way worse because you've lied on the disclosure. So if the relationship is worth doing a disclosure, do a formal therapeutic disclosure, do it with professionals, do it right, get it right, have the chance of doing things much better in the future.
And it came up today in group. One of our clients who has done a formal disclosure remembered something that they hadn't remembered, and they did like an amendment, right? Just to make sure it gets on there and gets, everything out on board. So it's very important.
It is a good formal therapeutic disclosure. They did a study, and it was like 92% of people. I mean, it wasn't fun, but they were glad they had done it, and it was moving things forward. But the ones that lie and withhold, like, it's a disaster. It actually makes things worse. So, okay. My essay husband and I have a toddler and a baby on the way. In October, I found messages that he decided to leave rather than tell me the truth. Over these few months, he's been AO. Have been AO. What is AO? And at the same time, holding on to me and been, I don't know, maybe with his affair partner. I see the broken home, the ruined family life, and he doesn't think we have a broken home, that nothing is ruined. I'm curious. And he's been acting out. Thank you. Most of the time I can figure it out, but I'm sorry. Okay, I'm curious if he doesn't have a CSAT, is there something else he can be doing to help him see what's happening in his life? Or do you see essays who really just don't care about their family?
Yikes, with a toddler and a baby on the way.
This is the one I would do a Dr. Rob expert consultation, because getting this is not going to be, he's going to read a book or do a webinar and go, oh, I get it. That's my thought.
We do know that, sex addicts, particularly sex and porn addicts, really lose the empathy piece. The empathy circuitry goes offline. So they can intellectually know something is going to be harmful to the people they love, but they're not connecting with the feeling. And so I think your husband sounds like he's kind of in that space right now where he's totally disconnected from the ramifications and any compassion or empathy. And so I'm curious why he doesn't have a CSAT. I think a CSAT probably is the kind of professional that could really be most helpful for him. But I think, I agree with Tammy. I think an expert consultation with Dr. Rob and get some straight talk and some suggestions on what happens next. You have too much at stake to let this slide.
You do. Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those, like, you get that this is a crisis, and on top of that, you're expecting. So, and you've got a toddler. Oh my! But the compartmentalization is real. The denial. I mean, any form of addiction. We're talking about sex and porn and those forms. However, any type of denial or any type of acting out, alcohol. I mean, we have people that come to treatment and, I only have a glass or two. Well, no, we're taking them to the ER because they underreported their alcohol use. So denial is so real, but it's also, as an addict, how we compartmentalize, and the guilt and shame that we might have to experience, it would be so unpleasant. So if we just pretend that everything's okay and I'm going to keep acting out and I get to do all these things and my family's fine, so having not an intervention like TV program, but having something intervene on his reality, and Dr. Rob is really good at that, would be my suggestion. But I mean, there's lots of free resources, the drop-in groups. A CSAT can give him a battery of assessments that will help, things scale.
He sounds like a good candidate for residential treatment too,
Yes,
which is
what I really think too. But
yeah,
one thing at a time.
Yeah.
If you can get him to do an expert consultation,
Yeah.
he can't be the dad that those kiddos
Oh,
deserve.
no.
When you're hurting the mom, you're not the, even if you think, oh, I'm playing with my kids, that's not what it's all about. It's devastating. So, okay. So Dr. Rob, and this is Dr. David, but Dr. Rob does have books. The question is on that you would recommend to help the betrayer to build empathy skills. So first of all, I'm assuming that the acting out has stopped, like, completely, and then the Out of the Doghouse book. But there's also a work group that started 41 minutes ago on the Seeking Integrity site. We run that one. Our program manager, Jason Swilling, runs that monthly, Out of the Doghouse Level 1. And that's a really good one. It's about rebuilding trust. So I would suggest, that particular thing, but that assumes that the problematic behavior has stopped, because you
Right.
can't build empathy skills and rebuild trust if you are still acting out in line.
No.
Other
I'll just throw in
thoughts?
that dialectical behavioral therapy that we mentioned earlier. Also, there's a lot of exercises in DBT that look at empathy building and compassion building as a way of learning the behaviors first. We call it kind of from the outside in. We learn what it looks like to be empathetic and compassionate. Even if I'm not feeling it in my heart, I can know how to do it. And that starts to be that half step that gets the ball rolling sometimes, and turning those skills into something that's real and connect to the feelings.
Yeah, it feels false, and partners have complained, and I understand. They're like, it's so awkward, and it sounds like he's just, saying stuff. And I was like, yeah, he is. He's practicing, but he has to
Right.
start
Exactly.
somewhere. It's like when you're learning a foreign language and, you slaughter all the pronunciations and, yeah, but you're trying and you're learning and you'll get better at it. So
Exactly. Yeah.
So this next one, I'm the SA, attended SILA last summer. Yay. I feel like I'm finally getting some traction and recovery after doing a lot of damage to my loved ones, especially my wife. What do you think about switching to a non-CSAT therapist, and can I ever stop seeing a therapist? Okay, I'm going to smile at this one.
So I guess I'd be more curious about what the circumstances are, why you want to switch therapists, right? Honestly, I think a CSAT has the best skills and training of anybody, hands down, for doing this work and this recovery. And if it's not even been a year yet, I'd go slow and cautious on that. In terms of the general staying in therapy, and I know this is a very therapeutically top-heavy process, but I think most people, myself included, over the course of their lives have gone in and out of therapy. I don't think we should be in therapy our whole lives, but I think I'll go for a year sometimes and maybe take 5 years off, and maybe something else comes up in my life and I go back. So I think it's that process where we kind of check in and out depending on what's going on. So it's not like you're doomed to have a weekly session for the rest of your life every week, but I think if you need it, you need it. And it can be very, very helpful. So I think just for therapy, but I think in the first year, I'd be really cautious about making any changes right now, because it sounds like it's going fairly well for you. And I don't understand why that's going on. I assume you have your reasons, but I'd really check them out pretty carefully. And then, I'm not sure where you're at in your recovery process, if you've done disclosure and all that. But I think depending on step work, you might be able to back off from therapy down the road. But I think I'd be very cautious about letting up right now. I think the first year we know statistically, and this is not just true for sex and porn addiction, but any addiction, if you can stay sober a year, your chances of staying sober greatly increase. There's just something statistically about doing this for a year cycle. And so I'd really hang in there and do everything you're doing without any major changes, at least for a year, and then evaluate it. I think it's really important.
So I had to smile because, like, this is so addict, and I'm in recovery for a few 24/7s, and it's like, I'm finally getting some traction. I'm finally starting to see some positive results. So let me change what I'm doing. Like, this is finally working. So let me stop. And, and that, I am grateful I have not relapsed, but I have asked people that relapsed and they were like, I quit doing what was working for me. And I was like, I don't want that. So I'm highly motivated to continue to do. Now, a CSAT therapist, I actually strongly encourage that, until now. It could be that, as time progresses, you go, okay, I'm able to back off. I'm not seeing every week. I'm every 2 weeks or something like that, and test it, and if you're going like, okay, things got a little more difficult, I'm going to up it. I, like Dr. David, I come and go in therapy. COVID was kicking my butt. I needed my therapist, and I just love knowing that I've got a safe place to go, and get support and tools. And and like right now, I'm not currently. She's there. I know she's there, and I can go see her whenever I want. Making an appointment, but just knowing that that's there as a resource. But what I also am wondering about is, what else are you doing? We've got 2 alumni meetings for this, the guys that have been through SILA. Are you joining those? Are you going to 12-step? Are you working the steps? Not just going to meetings. Are you working the steps? If you're doing lots of other support things, then, your ability to, back off on therapy, I would have the discussion with your therapist. We make really poor decisions on our own. I would also talk to your wife. If things are starting to get better with your wife, I bet your wife has an opinion on,
I bet she does
like,
too.
yeah, like I would be going like, yeah, no, this is finally working. So, I don't know, but I'd be cautious. Our best thinking got you to seeking integrity. I'm glad you came. But gosh, make sure you're leaning into, to everything. Do I go to meet? I went to so many meetings every week, early on in recovery. I don't. I still go to meetings, but I don't have to go to, 10 or 12 meetings a week anymore. I have more life, but I do recovery work every single day. I do. I have apps on my phone. I do stuff when I first get out of bed. Sometimes even before I get out of bed, I'm on my recovery app. So I don't take it for granted. I hope you don't too. Okay. My porn lying addict has declared that he is going to change and thinks that is enough. It's not. That's me saying that. I would like to ask for specific therapeutic words, kind and graceful image, language to counter mindset. He's attended so many sessions in SI group saying, looking back, he is needed, not just trust me, things will be different mantra. He's not doing any work and putting it on me, not accepting it. I'd like some approved boundary statements. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of a classic shot in the dark of every addict, right? I'm going to change. Just trust me. And we know that doesn't work, frankly. And so there's a little bit of denial here. And that's oftentimes, I think, addicts, when they're in that mindset, think they got this. And it's a very dangerous kind of place to be. I think boundary stuff is important here for you. And I think, remember, with boundaries that protect you, but also if you put down a boundary, you have to be willing to follow through. And so again, I think this is the kind of situation that's complex enough. I hope you have some kind of therapeutic support. You may want to talk to your therapist about this and develop a list of those statements you're referring to, because you can have kind of motivating, kind, graceful language, but I think you also have to be firm. And I think somebody sometimes in this mindset may not respond to kind, graceful languages as they would, but more to direct language. So it depends on your husband and your styles, but I think this is something where perhaps the messenger is also important to consider. I've had brought couples into my office and they have tried to have these conversations between the two of them, and it just doesn't work because they talk past each other, they get in fights. But if there's a third person, and often a professional, I can say the same words the wife might have said, and suddenly he hears it. So that kind of thing. So you may need just some assistance in the communication. But I think I wouldn't and this is just based on a feeling, I don't think I'd try to do this one on your own. I think you might try to take the situation and bring it into some kind of therapeutic context where you can get some assistance, because there's a little bit of that whole "I got this" mentality just never goes anywhere except south. And so I'd be really, really careful about that.
So one of the kind things that I have, suggested people use is, I love you too much to watch you continue to hurt yourself and our relationship. I need to take care of, I need to put up some healthy boundaries for me and, for my safety. I think the trust me things will be different is Dr. Rob talks often about its actions over time that actually should, that's the trust. So, I think it's, even if you take the past out of it, which that's a whole nother conversation, it's like, okay, show me from now going forward, show me what you're doing to be different. And I want your passwords. I mean, like, what is it you need, for your safety? And that's what boundaries are. It's like, I need these for my safety, emotional safety, physical safety, and financial safety. What is it that you need to make sure that you are okay? And then if he's stepping into the recovery space, I was, I don't know, I forgot which webinar, it doesn't matter, but it was like, why wouldn't you want the very best? Why wouldn't you want the best for yourself and for the relationship? So like, how do we each do that differently? Dr. Rob did a podcast on sexandrelationshiphealing.com with Dr. Stan Tatkin called We Do, and a healthy relationship. Both people are working for what's the best for the relationship, not selfishly, oh, I want this and you should just trust me. So, but in a healthy relationship, the two of you are stronger against the world, and you're physically healthier, happier, all of those things. In an unhealthy relationship, the opposite is true. Then you're like better off being single. So I think looking at it from, I really care about you, but I also care about me, can be helpful.
And I just, the lack of action, not willing to do anything, all that, the blaming, I mean, those are real bad signs. So, yeah, the language is important, but I think something needs to change there, for sure.
Well, and I've unusually, shared the, Dr. Rob expert consultations, but, I often say it's like our relationship is struggling. I want us to have the best chance at moving forward in a different way, in a happy way. And so I'm going to schedule one of these. Ideally, you're showing up for that as well, so that the two of us can give the information to Dr. Rob and we can hopefully navigate a path, but we can't do this on our own. So, okay, next question. Hello, how often do men engage in chronic betrayals of varying degree, which are simply poor choices and not related to addiction? Throughout my 20-year marriage, my husband has betrayed me with porn, sexting, chat lines, camming, at least 3 emotional affairs and 1 physical affair. We both started seeing separate CSATs for almost a year. He's been working on disclosure, but he doesn't think he is an addict. His therapist now agrees and says he doesn't need to do disclosure. I'm devastated. I want to know, did you hear that from his therapist, or did you hear that from your lying husband person? Because if you only heard it from him, I wouldn't trust it. If you heard it from the CSAT, I mean, therapist gets blamed for a lot of stuff. And I was like, if you heard it from the CSAT directly or the therapist directly, that's one thing. If you heard it only like, oh, my therapist doesn't think I'm an addict, don't trust it. So, but Dr. David, what do you think?
Yeah, do men and women make stupid choices sometimes and get involved and make a mistake? But what I'm seeing here is a pattern, right? And a really well-developed pattern. It's not just a bad mistake or a simple or flawed judgment, but over 20 years, betrayal with porn, sexting, chat lines, camming, 3 emotional affairs, a physical affair. That spells out a pattern of behavior to me that screams addiction, and much more than just a mistake 30 years ago or something. So I think this is really a classic case of denial and addiction denial. And sadly, and again, I go with Tammy, what actually happened there? But, we occasionally do see therapists that buy into this, and they're almost always not CSATs, and they don't understand sex addiction at all. And so they kind of misinterpret. But boy, this is to me, like textbook classic case of sex addiction. And I understand your devastation. I feel very badly for you, because this is a very sad situation, because he's clearly got some real issues and now just doesn't feel he does, and is getting some support, if you will, in air quotes, from his therapist. So, again, this is a case for some of that intervention that we spoke of in the last question, with You can say, I'm trying to save my marriage. It can be kind words. It can be having a session with a therapist to kind of bring the hammer down. But I think this is not okay. And it certainly doesn't sound like it's okay for you. And this is a really problematic situation. And it just really makes me angry. If it's true with the therapist, I have seen therapists do this, where they just kind of really minimize, and therapists are people too, obviously. But yeah, I think I would really encourage you to get your own support in this. Make sure you have your own. I think you do say, yeah, you both started seeing separate CSATs. Really rely on your support system, and take it to our work groups and things like that online, and get some support from the other people there too, because this is not okay. And there's a lot of support to be had out there for you, I think.
I'd be very curious if the CSAT gave him, like I mentioned earlier, we do some, before the clients come to us, we do a lot of assessment. We want to understand, and the CSATs have some specific assessments that they can give clients. Not all of them do that. There's a reason why there are some CSATs I refer to regularly and others I will never refer to. So just because they got the letters behind their name does not, make them an expert. It gives them knowledge, but it doesn't make them a great therapist. But I still hold to did you hear that from the CSAT specifically? And so I look at the alternative, because, Dr. Rob has talked about, some people can be, extremely emotionally immature, but gosh, is he that immature that he didn't have any way of stopping himself from this compulsive problematic behavior that's been devastating for your relationship for over 20 years? I mean, that would be an extreme case of immaturity. So to me, having the identification of addict is like, okay, now there's a reason. It's not an excuse, but there's a reason for why I did these really, detrimental things, the crazy making things, and now I can work on it. But this is and I realize this is just a snippet. There's more to the story. But yeah, getting more clarification. And I think at some point it's like, well, how do you work with your therapist to set, healthy, like if he's not going to do any of this, you've guys have been hanging out for a year and he's still in complete denial. What does that look like for you for the next year? Because a year from now, do you want to be still churning in the same spot? So what do you need to do to take care of you, regardless of what he does? So, okay. If my husband of 20 years, sexual sober now and no booze either for exactly 1 year, after my third D day last April, he was only going to one AA meeting a week, one individual CSAT a week, and one couple CSAT a week with me. No SA, no groups. He's not a believer in being in addiction and has no problem stopping alcohol, no DTs or cravings. It's really bizarre. He believes he has narcissistic tendencies and he can control his extreme sex worker problem through mindfulness. We've had a disclosure with my CSAT in July. It was brutal. More acting out than I could have ever seen coming. It's a lot for me to deal with, but I do my group, blah, 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 and lots of book work. I'm not sure that he can sustain this in sobriety, as I can't call it recovery. Can you? No. How can you recover from addiction that you don't believe in? Is mindfulness enough?
Yikes. Yeah. So, again, this is he's just really entrenched in his denial. And I'm a big fan of mindfulness. It's a huge technique in my own life, and I do it with therapeutically as well. Mindfulness on its own is no effective treatment for addiction. And you have to really understand the concept of addiction. We look at issues of surrender and willingness and all that stuff that I'm sure you're familiar with. And just, this is a really disturbing and problematic case, because I'm glad he's not drinking, but one AA meeting, first of all, AA is a very different kind of recovery process than sex addiction, right? They're both 12-step, but in AA, we just can stop. I'm not going to have an alcohol drink again. But with sex, we want to learn how to integrate healthy sex back into our lives. And so very different strategies, and you can't pick that up in AA. So there's a whole lot wrong here. And no doubt he's narcissistic. Most addicts are, by the way. But yeah, and what else? And so what? So I think just, and you're living the consequences, right? You're talking about these disclosures and the discoveries and how brutal and extreme they are. So, he sounds like he's kind of clueless right now. I hate to be so blunt, but boy, this is a problematic situation. Again, I would really rally your support around you. Make sure you're getting straight advice on what you need to do to protect you, because I'm not sure your husband and his mindfulness are going to go very far toward recovery in this particular situation. Yeah, Tammy, anything else on that one?
Like I'm with you. This is not, I mean, I'd say abstinence. The opposite of addiction is healthy attachment. And he's, I mentioned earlier, our best thinking got us into this. So mindfulness is a great technique, but, so in the 12 steps, there's it talks about the promises, and the promises come true if we do the work, and we can be happy, joyous, and free. So, this is like, well, I'm just not going to do that. And yes, I agree with Dr. David. All addicts have narcissistic personality or narcissistic tendencies. We're highly focused on continuing to do what we want to do, which just sounds like what, I'm only going to do this. So I really encourage you, like, what healthy boundaries do you need to set for you, so that regardless of, the train wreck that may be coming, what do you need to do to take care of you? So that's what I would encourage. We aren't going to get to all the questions, but several people popped up with what is camming. So camming is cam girl, cam boy. So somebody is on a video and they're paid to do, sexual things, but it's not, unlike being in real person, it's done via video. Is that a good enough? You can do a better job of explaining. What did I?
No, that was a very good explanation of how it kicks off dopamine the same way a real encounter would or porn would. It's just a different way of getting that dopamine flowing. And it's first of all, we think about sex addicts having intimacy disorders, attachment disorders. It's a much safer, controlled way because you're not even dealing with a person. You're doing an image and a fantasy on the screen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just, from that point of view, it's a remote way to kind of get dopamine, but it's certainly very much an addiction.
Well, and it can be very much minimized because I didn't have real sex with that person.
Exactly.
And it's still a huge betrayal for partners. And it's still, just like you said, it keeps someone from being intimately connected with it's easy. It's transactional. I'm paying for this. You're going to do what I tell you to do.
No vulnerability, no risk.
No. Yeah. So those are porn, camming, those are the kinds of people, participants that go to the Porn Addiction 101 work group on the Seeking Integrity site. The hookup apps, meeting for affairs, the one that just explained, all of the kinds of acting out that doesn't really think he has a problem. That's Sex Addiction 101. But, but I digress. That's a label, right? So, but anyway, Dr. David, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
So, yeah, had fun.
Yeah. And I didn't even get to ask you about my complex chemical question. I'm going to have to dig it up and ask you, because I'm just curious. It was another one. I was like, I've never even heard of this, and you can get it at the gas station now. So anyway,
oh dear.
Yeah, I know. So I will send it to you. So bye everybody. Thanks for joining. Okay. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thanks, Tammy.
Join Dr. David on Wednesday night.
Yep, for sure. Bye-bye.